it's good to know that as this webinar, I'm going to go in just 1 second. I'm going to go in and start doing the prayer because it's 8 o'clock. And I want you to know that as that prayer of gratitude goes forth, it activates the healing mechanisms in the physiology. So a lot of healings take place in these webinars that I don't even get a chance to discuss because I can only discuss one thing at a time. So I just want to speak that point out so everybody realizes that during the webinar, there's a lot going on and you may feel changes or shiftings of energies as we're going along, and that's because the healing process continues throughout the whole hour and 15 minutes. Okay, let's start. It's 8:01. Thank you to the source of creation, the birther of all the universes, for being the very life of this live webinar, for being each aspect, every part of it. Thank you to all the diversified forms of creation, particularly those subtle, far-reaching, expanded values which have the capabilities, intelligence, and perspective to create the transformations that support everyone's highest good, everyone's capacity to manifest at a masterful level, everyone's highest health, and alignment with cosmic intention. Thank you to the ancestors for being in this webinar, for your love and support, for the opportunity to give back. Thank you to the divine expression of each one of us, as each one of us, for blessing this live webinar with the ability to forge into new areas, to create from the level of consciousness those tools, those understandings, those forms of being which support the manifesting process in the highest and best possible way, which support everyone's highest health, which allow us to be our full potential efficiently, effectively, powerfully. As always, thank you all for being with me. I'm so grateful. Always, this time in the group is extremely enlivening. It's just wonderful. All right. So tonight's webinar is about manifesting, obviously. And I've got the little sheet in front of me. And as always with these webinars, I tend to get a lot of downloads before we even get started, you know, in the weeks and days ahead, and particularly the days ahead. So I just want to start by running through a kind of a brief explanation of what is energy work and briefly describing what we're going to do tonight for those who are new. So energy work is the means is technology of directing attention intelligently to specific areas of one's self, which are the areas required to create positive transformation in order to produce specific effects. And the nature of attention, and attention is utilized in a big way in energy work because attention is the tool. Attention in its essential nature is moving consciousness. Attention is consciousness on the move. And because it is comprised of the very, very finest structure of creation, it's like the source of creation that you have that you can beam it out in different directions. It's like being able to beam the source energy of creation wherever you want to put it. So it has this effect of activating or enlivening whatever it touches. So if there is imbalance anywhere in the system, then attention can move into that area and can create wholeness, totality. It completes whatever incompletions are there. It's a beautiful tool and everyone's got it. And it's easy to use, because we're used to directing our attention anyway through our senses, But tonight we're going to talk about directing attention from various levels of consciousness and the mechanics of that process. Okay. The other point for those who are new is that what we think of as ourself is comprised in, I'm giving you 3 parts. There is the source of creation, and that's yourself. There is the physical form, and that's yourself. And then there's a place where the physical form and infinity meet, and that is also yourself. And in these sessions, we're going to look at that place where these 2 values, which tend to be kind of, they're different from each other. Source of creation unmanifest, physical reality manifest. Source of creation absolutely silent, physical level of creation constantly moving and changing and evolving. So there's, right where they meet, it's like a kind of a pressure is created because they're different. They tend to be different from one another. So we look at that under the microscope. Here we are, everybody's seen my fingers a zillion times, right? Those of you who've been with me. And we're going to look at these layers, and we can consider what we know to be ourself, to range all the way from unmanifest being all the way up into the densest level of expression. And so we have a smooth continuum, but we divide it into 8 layers so that we can direct our attention to whichever layer is required, so that we can really get in and see the details and understand what we're doing. And seeing the details is what this time that we're in is all about. Because this is a little bigger theme I'm weaving in here, which is that it's very interesting, dynamic, and exciting time in history with regards to the changes that are happening all over Earth, the political changes in America, etc., are aimed towards giving us a breadcrumb trail, which allows all of us as a collective to awaken in a way that will surprise everyone, that surprises all of us. The idea is that the technologies for dealing with the challenges that we've got going on right now are not the ones that have worked in the past. So anybody who saw my latest video, I kind of talked about that a bit, but I do need to bring it up here because it's still a bit of a theme, and I think it's going to probably be a theme for at least another half a month to a month, probably. Just looking at the cosmic constructs and so forth, it's still in the air, maybe through the election in the US. Anyway, so previous technologies of dealing with this situation where we have administrative structures which are very protected and very, very powerful and are calling all the shots and pulling all the strings. And then you've got the rest of the mass of humanity who in the past formed together in coalitions or collectives to, try to cast each their own little individual vote, and that together makes a big vote. And finding that process, the powers in the isolated levels of creation are so powerful, those individuals are so powerful that their agenda is the one that goes. And it doesn't really matter how many of us band together, the agenda's already kind of been set for us. So we know that banding together, as certainly on a material level, isn't working. And also we know that sending heroes up who will give 220% only ends up being a form of sacrificing heroes. So we know that, and this ties in now to our theme of manifestation, that what we all need to do is, the reason this is happening is to teach everyone on earth, everybody who cares or is involved in this process, to function, to manifest from a finer, more powerful level of being, collectively and individually, and in so doing to be able to really concretely structure a future for not only ourselves individually, but for the world that reflects highest dignity for everyone, blessings in every part of the world, well-being, resources, opportunities for everyone, fulfillment of everyone's desires. So that's kind of another sort of overview for tonight. A bigger point is that we're doing this for ourselves, but we're also doing this for the collective. Okay. So I have a couple of questions that came in, and just checking. Okay, good. And the questions are really great launching points for tonight's webinar. So let me just go ahead and get started with those. This is such an intelligently thought out question here. This very sweet person has watched pretty much all of my webinars, and many of them more than once, 2 or 3 times for most of them. And so he's pointing out that in a really early webinar on manifestation for wealth, I made reference to templates. And templates that for pretty much everything, including eternal youth, perfect health, relationships, any amount of money, etc. And the same with the template that you refer back to it. It has an energetic structure in being, and by valuing that and honoring it and reflecting back on it, it makes you stronger, makes the muscle of consciousness and the more manifest levels of being like an exercise. It makes that part of being more capable and pulling through the spectrum of reality from unmanifest to manifest. So anyway, it's a beautiful question. I love the way he's using my words. Thank you. So for those who weren't familiar with the particular webinar in which I mentioned these templates, just a brief review. And of course, the points that extend and expand that, because that's what we're going for tonight. So we have this understanding that we have the physical form, and then we have the subtler forms. Pretty much everyone begins in infancy not having their consciousness sort of isolated into their physicality. If you have raised children, you know that children in their infancy, in their tininess, they just experience themselves as an appendage of mother and just integrated, completely integrated with the whole universe. But as we know, the teeny tiny nervous systems haven't evolved and developed. So as they evolve and develop, more and more separation into terrible twos, and then the ego evolution that takes place around 3 or 4 and so forth. In teenage years, there's more separating from parents and so forth. So there's this period of early development where there's a separation that takes place until one is pretty nicely identified with their physiology. And then as they start evolving, they identify with the mental capacity and emotional capacities and so forth. Then in the teenage years, especially when the homunculus starts to myelinate and prune, and the motor cortex, and so teenagers can accomplish amazing things physically, amazing on the level of sports, and amazing technique, musical technique. I used to teach music. It's amazing what teenagers can accomplish. So they've identified with what we would call present self, or the aspects of ourselves that are associated with the present lifetime. However, to utilize the technologies of the templates and matrices, which was one of the other questions, it's necessary to be able to recognize and self-identify with these subtler levels of the self. So what happens at some point or another in life, for some people, early, for some people as after these kind of adult brains developed, is they begin that search back for unity again. And I know that everybody who's with me is already in that space. So thank you for that. So the point is that it's easy to look in the mirror, see your body, and identify, oh yeah, that's me, that's my body. I'm this antenna of the universe. It's another thing entirely to recognize individuality in terms of totality. I would like to offer to those of you in the audience who are meditation teachers that the level of the self at which we identify with, honor, and are honored as members of that tradition, that sacred tradition of masters, comes in around the spirit level of the physiology, spirit, causal, celestial level, right in there. And as meditation teachers, of course, for those who are, that awareness that the real connection is made in the field of totality. That's the real connection. But it's that feeling of being part of a great tradition. And the reason I bring this up for those of you who aren't meditation teachers is because becoming a meditation teacher sets up it organizes events so that one kind of falls into that space of recognizing greatness first in the teachers who are very great, who have lived on this earth and have been responsible for the perpetuation of pure knowledge and the ability to impart the experience of totality to others. But through the intelligent direction of awareness, anyone can find that level of their own being. This is not something for which there is a monopoly. This is not something that is allowed only for certain people. Yeah, if you want to become a TM teacher, yeah, you have to go to teacher training and learn to do it. And I'm not suggesting that people haven't done that, do that, try to teach other people to meditate. But what I am suggesting is that every single one of us on earth, whether you've even never meditated in your life, every single person has access to that part of their being, which is great beyond all comprehension. We have, and here's where we need to go into some healing work for everyone. We come from a tradition of people, ancestors going back, who have, over the course of time, cultivated, in the name of humility, have cultivated a general sense of feeling, like not special, or feeling as if when they look at themselves, first noticing the flaws, weaknesses, and shortcomings, and then if somebody mentions something good, feeling kind of uncomfortable about that. We're going into the spirit, causal, and celestial levels of the physiology. And what's happening in this area is integration. We're looking at integration of infinite being, infinite silent field source of creation into these layers of the physiology. Not just for yourself individually, but for the ancestors as well. Self-deprecation is not humility. Humility is knowing that nothing is done outside the context of divinity. That there's only one being expressed as each of these antennas. Each of you are an antenna. I'm an antenna of the universe, the whole universe. At the celestial level of the physiology, your body looks like a field, and it starts at the beginnings of the Big Bang, and it collapses at the other end of creation, and it stretches out into every corner of creation. This is the celestial body. It looks like a field. That means you are the universe, and you're the universe even at a manifest level of being. Not even getting to the unmanifest, totally unmanifest level. But we don't tend to focus senses at this level of the self always. So sometimes the reality of this level of oneself escapes recognition. So one of the things we're doing with this integration is we're bringing integration into these very deep levels of being, these subtle levels of the physiology for yourself and for ancestors. And what we're doing is we're closing up the gaps where there's a sense of separation or otherness with regards to everything else in creation. And what I'm seeing for some people is heat, particularly in the digestive organs. It brings up for some reason, and we're looking at, like I said before, you and your ancestors, so we're looking at a collective here. And this heat, I'm seeing a feeling of it's not fair, and other people, may have that experience. I don't have that experience. For the ancestors particularly, it's not fair because my world doesn't support that. I belong to a collective whose belief systems don't even have words for what this experience is. How can I possibly integrate? I'm putting that question back to divine being, because divinity knows how to forge a path through this bramble. Digestion is about metabolizing information as well as it is about metabolizing food. So, and the liver and the gallbladder. Seats of heat. Heat sits in this part of the body. So clearing anger from the liver and gallbladder. And what's coming in to the liver and gallbladder as the heat moves out. And for those of you who are new, we have a cord of light that runs from the crown of the head all the way down into Mother Earth. It's an energy channel, energetically through the body, into which the heat goes, into which the anger and frustration and feeling it's not fair. It's not fair feeling. And gently, the thing is that we notice that that's where the feeling of it's not fair sits. So awareness goes in there, and awareness activates that area. It activates the organs. It activates the energy field in the organs. There's a kind of a magnetic field around the organs. And so that activates. And what it does is it starts to loosen up those discordant feelings. As they loosen up, they move into that cord of light. And as they move, some of the ancestors are, and as the ancestors start to wake up on this, they receive homage. They receive tarpanum. And they receive downloads and information of how energy healing works, so that it's not a big surprise what's going on to them. Learning to recognize the feeling of directing attention very concisely into specific organs, going in and feeling those energies. And then as the energies start to loosen up, they start to unfurl from the energetic structure of those organs, and they move into that cord of light, and they kind of swirl down and are released back to Mother Earth. At the same time, the presence of divinity in each person cherishes that experience. It recognizes and silently witnesses the experience. The silent witnessing of the experience smooths the path. and supports the process with grace. Kidneys are also being looked at. Kidneys, because the experience of purification is also extremely important in the process. The healing process, the manifestation process. Because everybody's got, let's pulling back into the core of manifestation, because that's what we're talking about tonight. The manifestation process involves change. And any time a system changes from one state into another state, it's like the system has to go through a kind of a transformation process. And in that transformation process, it is possible for imbalances to creep in, or for moments to occur where everything is chaotic. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the work of Thomas Kuhn, who was a great scientific philosopher of the last century, but he looked at the patterns by which knowledge, scientific knowledge, objective knowledge has evolved through the centuries. And his point was that we start with a paradigm that's working. Information comes in that doesn't necessarily nicely fit the paradigm. It's starting to stretch us outside that paradigm. So first we try to make the pieces of information fit our paradigm. And when they don't fit, then after a while you have to throw away the paradigm. And there's that point where the old paradigm has been thrown out. There's way too much information that doesn't fit, and the new paradigm has not yet evolved. There's that point. And in that point, that's a spot where I'm seeing, in these deeper levels of the physiology, is where the gap is between the sense of individuality and the sense of totality. And what we're going for here is complete integration, so that the totality is integrated even in that chaotic period between when the old system is dissolving and the new system has not yet established. I'm offering this at the feet of Ma. I call the source of creation Ma sometimes. It's like mother of creation, right? Ma. And what I'm seeing, what the answer that I'm getting back is that grace is ever present in every particle of creation. But in those moments when the old has broken down and the new has not set up yet, there is a tendency to be absorbed in the transformation process, overwhelmed by the transformation process. And in that state, one can miss the grace. We're looking for how to reposition individuality and how to reposition structures of consciousness so that grace is not lost in the gap. And this definitely ties into our big picture that we're looking at, our worldwide picture, right? Because we're undergoing a world transformation right now. That's why things are looking crazier than they've ever looked before. My mom knows, she's in on this webinar, and she said in all her years, 88 years, she's been living on this earth, that she's never seen an election process like the one that we're going through at this time. It's extremely unusual. So along with integration, grace. Now, I don't want to lose the points on the templates and the matrices. So I think I'd like to offer to Ma the principle of the templates and the matrices and see if we can bring these in now and start to actually really look at them and work with them. Okay, brief description for new people. Matrices are created from beams or streams of consciousness, which inside our body, we know them as meridians. They also emanate from chakras, from the chakra points. And they go from minusculely small to massively large, and connect everything in creation through a web. Think of it as a web of consciousness or web of life that has a life force of its own. It has its own sense of self. It has its own sense of self. And we connect with this matrix of life primarily from an astral level of the physiology. So if we've got physical, etheric, mental, emotional, here's the astral level here. And this connection is like an intimate friendship. The more devotion we give, more love and devotion and compassion and sensitivity we offer into this aspect of creation, the more aligned and attuned we become with it. And the easier it is to function comfortably in environment, in the larger environment. And this ties back to one of the questions tonight. I have a lady who has sometimes as much as an 8-hour daily commute on crowded buses, and she's extremely sensitive soul, extremely highly evolved soul. So she feels everything, and it's very overwhelming to the system. So the point is that the astral body has capabilities of both being kind of an open field that's sucking in or soaking in all the information, or one has the ability to draw that astral field into a more inward flowing structure. So awareness can flow out, or awareness can flow in. And so what we're doing with the astral bodies, and everybody's astral bodies getting a chance to kind of explore, how do I expand out? How do I push awareness out through that astral level of myself into my environment? And how, when needed, do I pull awareness in around the self? One of the keys to not be overwhelmed, if you are a very sensitive soul, which I know a lot of us are, one of the keys to not being overwhelmed by the energies of others is to this healing that's taking place in these subtle levels of the self, to be able to clearly identify still where I am, who I am. We talked about this in the last webinar on relationships. It's beautiful to be able to kind of knit together one's soul or one's being with another beloved, but at the same time, never losing that sense of this instrument, this antenna, big creation, multiple antennas, we're all antennas of the universe, that this antenna still maintains a sense of its own integrity all the way into the finest level of creation. So I always know that I have my own sense of self all the way down to this finest level. And this, I think, is part of this weaving that we're doing. There is a method to this madness. We're going to get to the templates, and this work that we're doing with these finer levels of the physiology are, I think, important preliminary steps before we take on the more advanced work with the templates. So the principle is that wholeness or totality becomes integrated at every level of what we know to be ourself, even the very, very abstract, very expanded levels of the self. And at the same time, discrimination and clarity, transparency are present. And this, as I'm saying these words, what's happening is that celestial level of physiology starts humming and vibrating with these qualities of discrimination, transparency, clarity. So that even though I know, each of us knows that I am the totality, I am the universe, there's also that sense of one's expression at the most dense level of self, that one is not lost. There's no part of you that's ever lost. And at this level, there's nothing that we experience outside ourselves. There's no other human being. There's no other form of creation that isn't also an intimate expression of self. I know this isn't logical. I know some people's intellects are saying, but wait. How can you be yourself and be everyone else at the same time and know the difference? It's like a paradox. And I'm sorry, it sounds like that. But the reality is that the mental body is up here. And that logic and discrimination is a much more superficial function of being, and that down at the subtler levels of self, we get these quantum rules of creation where opposites can exist together harmoniously, where all the laws of nature at this level, at this spirit level of the physiology, we run into all the laws of nature, gravity and space-time, and all the rules by which the creation functions, and we're not bound by them at that level of the physiology, the spirit level. We're not bound by space-time at the fine levels of being. Fine levels of being, and experience the entire range of creation all in one shot. That includes the experience that I am the universe and I am that guy sitting next to me on the train. And even if my awareness goes to him, and for those of you who are sensitive, this can happen. You know, you stop at a truck stop or something, and there are lots of people there, and some of them are in good health and some of them aren't. And how can I say, oh, that person over there who's got this terrible illness that I am perceiving because I can see inside their bodies is me? How can I say that when I can feel inside my body? My body does not have that terrible illness because I don't drink alcohol or whatever. This information is coming in first as a divine cognition. That means it's rolling into every physiology here simultaneously, picked up by the physiology. Physiology understands it as a sensation. Physiology experiences it as a state of being, a state of wholeness and totality. And at the same time, I express myself as the multiplicity. And at the same time, each point is my unique self. Being the wholeness and being all individuality at the same time. And being able to discriminate the difference. This is the download coming in. It's okay if the intellect has trouble with that. We just love the intellect. Just love it and bless it and say, we're saying to the intellect and all the belief systems that are connected to this intellectual function, you know, you are blessed and your vision of what's going on is real within a limited context. But now we're moving into a bigger context. And that's what this session is about here, is learning to identify individuality in a bigger context, because the bigger you are, the more you can do. The greater the ability to harness potential, it comes from recognizing the potential, recognizing one's universality, one's greatness. So there's that level of self, which is identified with the great tradition of masters. The great tradition of masters have lived on this earth and on other planets and other solar systems for everyone's sake. They have lived for the sake of all of us, not just for a few people who had the good fortune to go through special training, but for everybody. This isn't an exclusive thing. This is not a monopoly. This is for everyone. So when we identify with the 4 dense levels of the physiology, we get me in this life, who I am, my work, my name, my family, my job, my education, my belongings, whatever. When we move down into this subtler levels, moving awareness down into subtler levels of the self, we start to recognize self in terms of one's own greatness. And that means that feeling when the intellect had to break down a little bit, the intellect had to say to itself, well, I guess my perspective isn't the be-all and end-all perspective. That's that point of crisis when the old paradigm breaks down and the new paradigm is building up. And that's the point where we lovingly apply compassion, grace, understanding. The comfort of truth. The comfort. Causal body, for celestial body, resonates in those frequencies. Comfort, truth, grace, compassion. Celestial body starts producing energy structures, which are the manifestation of those qualities, and they loop up. In energy work, we're folding consciousness in on itself. We're looping it in on itself to create specific effects. So loops from the causal and celestial level, looping up to that intellectual level, heart and emotional and intellectual level of the physiology, to bring in, to create a habit, to create a pattern of providing a support system when we go from one level of reality to the next level, when we transition. So the transition is graceful and smooth and does not give rise to imbalance in the system. And that's what I'm seeing is the next thing that we need to look at, is that in the past, this has happened. In the past, transitions have been rough and difficult. And we all know, we need look no further than the news to see that the transition that humanity is going through right now is rough for some individuals. Some individuals are having a pretty hard time with it. So we don't just want to do this for ourselves. We want to do this for everyone, because the transition that we're going through now is a global transition. So it's not good enough for us as individuals to be able to go through the transition with grace. Out of fairness. Remember before that it's not fair feeling? Out of fairness, everyone deserves to be able to go through the transition with grace. So what I'm feeling is a great, sweet, deep heart activation for everybody in the group. I'm just feeling your sweet hearts flowing. And that flow being offered like flowers at the feet of our own divinity, our own divine nature. Because from the level of divine nature, those flowers multiply to infinity. The field of pure being or pure consciousness is an infinite field. Infinite is its nature. Infinite potential. So that sweetness offered in its infinite potential into the field of divine silence. And as it comes back, it rolls, consciousness folds, right? It curls in on itself. It's always curling in on itself. It goes from divine nature, it curls back in to the physiology. The physiology receives this like tingles of light. This physiology is experiencing it like tingling light coming in, sparkles of light. But the point is that it's not just for us. It's coming back into the family of humanity, particularly in those specific areas where suffering is the greatest, where the transition is the hardest for people. That's where we want to, that's where this little pattern, and we can think of the pattern as a kind of customized matrix that we've created to help people as they move through transitions, but it's also helping everyone in this group. We're going back through time and we're catching those points in the story of the soul's journey where transitions were hard. And we're going in and applying this little It's like we're alchemists or something, created on the level of consciousness, this combination of grace and compassion and clarity and trust and comfort. And so it's like it creates like a little geometrical form, and it goes through into all the points in the past where the transition was hard. And what I'm seeing, I'm describing to you, because that's my job here, that your divine being goes with it. There's an aspect of our consciousness, our infinite consciousness, our God-like aspect of consciousness that goes with that little form to those points, those transition points that were hard or rough, and provides a little extra quality of life force into it. You could call it chi or prana, but you can also call it one's own angelic form. If we want to give it an animate, if we want to think of it as an animate element, that nobody knows you better than yourself. And if we look back a long soul's journey, many, many, many transitions, some of them smooth, some of them not so smooth, that those moments when the soul really needed support, the being in the present, which is sitting comfortably in front of the computer and feeling all easy peasy about it, provides that sense of, it's okay, I love you, I know you intimately because you are myself, I know you, I love you, I give you this gift because I needed this gift at this time. And the self of the past experiences divine presence. In those darkest moments, the self of the past feels as if there is a comforting presence there. There is a sweetness that desires the suffering to be resolved and provides a level of understanding and compassion that felt missing. And for many people, that transition point is associated with death, right? So innumerable for all of us, innumerable deaths, because what a transition that is, right? Huge transition. So the innumerable deaths that were frightening if you were a little frightened, or you weren't certain what was going to happen, maybe had to let go of some very firmly or stubbornly held beliefs, like when I die, there's nothing and that's the end, or whatever it was that was making it hard at that moment to let go. We're softening all those points. Transitions are exquisite because when the old paradigm collapses and the new one has not yet risen, all possibilities exist. And this is where we tie back into manifestation, is that whatever the aspect of your life is that you would like to change or evolve or manifest into something else, we had to clear away all the trepidation, all the fear, all the uncertainty, all the associated impressions and structures on the subtle levels of consciousness underlying in the unconscious, subconscious levels of the mind, in the heart, even in the memories and past lives and so forth, that may have contributed to some resistance to that transition, to being able to just dive like a dolphin. We just want to swim in it like dolphins, right? We all deserve to do this. And this particular transition time of the earth, all people of the earth can comfortably, what we'd like to do is we would like to move through our earth transition a little more gracefully, and that can mean a little more quickly, because if we drag it out, number one, if we drag it out, we see the details better. So one of the reasons, because we've already had the technology on Earth for a long time to make this particular transition that we're trying to make right now as a race, as a body of humanity. We've had this technology, but the technology keeps getting thwarted. For instance, we've had the technology of free energy. We've had the technology of cars that run on air. We've had all kinds of technologies here, and we haven't been able to bring them to fruition yet because the process wants to be savored. And who wants to savor that process? Divine Being wants to savor that process. Divine Being experiences itself through our life experience. You thought your life experience was your life experience. It's the life experience of totality. It's the life experience of the Mother of the Universe. Mother of the Universe experiences it as all of our experiences rolled into one experience, and all the experiences of every other being on every other planet and piece of creation all rolled, and everything that might have happened and that could have happened and that could happen in the future also. So that's a big experience. But it is the experience of that aspect of creation. And therefore, she wanted to slow it down. Divine Being wanted to slow it down to savor each precious little detail and to thus self-know in completeness. However, part of that self-knowing process is knowing, how does divinity penetrate fear? How does divinity penetrate uncertainty? How does divinity penetrate any of the blockages that slow down the transition process? So what we're doing is applying attention, which is in its own very nature divine material, divine structure. Example, attention exists both in the relative field of creation and in the subtle levels of creation at the same time. For instance, you can't take attention and grab it like that with your dense hands, right? But if someone has their attention on you, you can feel it, right? Everybody's had that. Like, somebody's looking at me, and then you turn around and like, oh, somebody was looking at me. So we all know that attention is both, it's like in the gap. It sits in this integration that we're doing with the subtle levels of the being, of our physiologies. It sits in that gap between the gaps between manifest and unmanifest level of self. That's why you can feel it. Mm-hmm. But you can't measure it with a ruler. It is both unmanifest and manifest. Divine Being, pure attention. So pure attention goes into those specific spots where the discord is that blocks a smooth transition. And in so doing, opens up the capacity for all of us, all of you, to harness your own ability to start with something and say, okay, we need to transform this to something better. Allow it to collapse with grace, without fear, completely comfortable, all possibilities available at that point, and then calmly, because we're not freaking out at that point, restructure the reality that is desirable, the reality that is better aligned with cosmic intention, that is more life-supporting for yourself and for others, that is sustainable, that allows everyone to live in higher dignity, in better health, in greater happiness, more opportunities, more resources. Okay, so let's start taking a look now that we're not afraid to look. Let's start taking a look into this gap, into this actual transition process. We've talked about matrices, and we created a custom matrix for tonight. Now let's talk about the templates. So templates exist at a very fine level of creation, very, very fine, down in this celestial causal level. So when I found them originally, I found them existing from the source of creation. So that means when the Big Bang was full, when the singularity of creation was folded in on itself like a seed, and then it decided to come forth, it poofed. Before it came forth, it poofed. And when it poofed up, that's when individuality began to self-recognize. Oh, I'm something here. And that was the point when all of us and the universe were all contained together very, very closely, very, very orderly state of existence. And then just as that seed started to sprout, just as it started to sprout, that's the point where the templates are found. They are what we would call today the Akashic Record, only at that point they were more like stem cells of the Akashic Record. They were like potential for the Akashic Record. So in a very, very simple, very fine state. The beauty of looking at these forms in this fine state is that it's easy to wrap awareness around them because of their simplicity, because of their purity, pristine purity. Templates exist at the very fine level, and I'm just asking Ma if we can get a little bit more detail on that. I'm asking about the relationship between the resonations in the celestial body and the templates, because I know they're really, really close to each other. We're like splitting hairs here. So what I'm getting is, and for discussions about the resonations in the celestial body, check my YouTube videos, because I think I've talked about that quite a bit in the past. That just sets up the framework for the templates to fit in. And they click in, for them to click into the denser levels of the physiology so that we can actually start applying those laws of nature, applying those specific energies that give rise to specific effects. Yeah, templates come up right kind of at the gap between the celestial and the causal level of physiology. At the causal level of physiology, the potential to create, self-create, various kinds of light medicines and specific effects that allow for like capabilities like, say, clairvoyance or bending time or solving impossible, finding solutions to the impossible and so forth. All this sits in the capability of this causal body based on organs or structures that are there that are able to kind of bend or turn that pure, pristine energy of consciousness and start to shape it. But the templates are a little before that. They're like the blueprints. Templates sit right there in the gap between the resonations of consciousness, the resonations of the celestial body, which is a big field, right? It's the whole, when your celestial body resonates with, say, compassion, which we were just doing a few minutes ago, all this resonates too. The whole universe resonates with compassion. When you resonate with compassion, it doesn't stop at your body and your heart. It includes everything. So these celestial resonations set up a condition, like a fertile ground, for the templates to take hold. Because there's something about, there's part of the nature of these templates is they kind of like click in. Like I experienced that since the very beginning with them, that there's a way they sort of integrate into our manifest level of our being, the manifest level. Blueprints, they're like blueprints. I'm looking at everyone's celestial body, everyone's causal body, and the point at which the templates click in, and I'm just double checking that everything's clear and good, and that if there's any healing, if there's any specific energy healing we need to do for this area in order to support greater capacity to harness this technology. So what's coming back to me is that at this level of creation, being is very thick. In the relative dense level of creation, you're sitting over there and I'm sitting over here and we're kind of separated from each other, right? But at the fine level of creation, being, everything is thick with being. The air is thick with being. The air is thick. Souls are everywhere. Everywhere is so saturated. And then, of course, you get to the field of pure being, where there's nothing but being. That's the unified field, the source of creation. But right up here in this celestial causal level, it's thick with all these angels everywhere and so forth. If you want to think of them as angels, or if you want to think of them as forms of your own divine self, which empowers you better. So I'm offering these perspectives to help support the evolution of the structures that will allow you to harness those energies better. It is the self. So what I'm saying, the reason I'm bringing this up is because these templates, what came back to me from when I went into silence and asked, was that the templates themselves have an animate quality in them. They are, think of them as friends. Think of them as life forces without bodies the way we think of bodies. Oh, on Earth, we think of bodies as corporeal, but our solar system is full of life. Just our solar system alone. And there are bodies of such amazing variety and types and qualities and expressions. It's incredible. The range of diversity is just incredible. So templates evidently are also life forms. They're life forms. They have a life of their own. And as such, it is our job to treat them tenderly. Tenderest intention is the key to utilizing the potential of the templates. I mean, remember, they're like babies, right? It's like the Akashic record in its baby form. It just started at the beginning of the Big Bang. So it's this very tender thing. They're very tender. They're very simple. You know, you can't go in and go, hey, come over to my house. I'm going to make some money. You know, it's just like, no, it's very, very, very delicate, very sensitive. Did I sound very American when I said that? Sorry. Oh, God. Anyway. So once again, I'm asking about structures or functions of the human physiology at this very fine level required for making best use of the templates. So we've established tenderness is important, delicacy is important, finest intention. So the intention, I would like to be well, would like to create a healthy body, a robust body. But that intention, it has to go to a very fine level, to such a fine level that there's no holding on to the intention at all, to such a fine level that one recognizes the very intention, everybody has an intention out here, right? Because we're here for a manifesting webinar. So you can use an example in your own being right now for this intention. And for my sweet lady who's got who has to ride on the bus for 8 hours a day, I recommend for her the intention of balance, the balance between sensitivity and dullness. I'm just putting that out there because I love you and I read your question. It was very detailed. I'm not going to read it to everyone because it's very personal and very detailed, but I did want to honor the fact that you took the time to ask the question, and it's an important question. So the intention, we want to bring the intention into its finest form, because on the surface, the intention might come out in words, English or human words, and it may not really resonate to the source of the real intention that's behind it. Almost always, a desire can be brought back to its simpler form and a simpler form and a simpler form. It's like you want to ask the right question, right? You want to get the template that's really the template, the right principle that's going to come in and fulfill the desire in a very beautiful way, with grace and exceeding expectations, etc. So we want to get that desire to a fine form. And in pretty much all cases, when we start getting into the fine forms, they become more simple. Just like the templates, they become more simple, which means your desire is starting to take a shape similar or harmonious with the nature of the templates themselves. They are very simple. Your desire becomes very simple. It goes out of the range of speech and words, and then it goes into, anybody who's worked with vision boards and that kind of thing, into the form of pictures or impressions. And then beneath that, we go from the picture and impression to what is the feeling of fulfillment that comes with that desire. Whatever, if it's a desire for a really beautiful romantic relationship, or it's the desire for a sufficient amount of wealth to do some project, or it's the desire for awakening for the whole world, or understanding, or it's a desire for the ability to work like a master of manifestation at the finest level of creation. All these desires have in common a feeling of resolution, completion, wholeness, fulfillment. These are the simple structures out of which the desire is formed. So bringing the desire down to that level and experiencing one's own vision or conception of fulfillment is a way of making the desire tender or delicate. If we want to take the quality of fulfillment, for example, fulfillment means everything's complete. I have what I need. It's that feeling of I have what I need. I have not just what I need, but what I wanted, even what I didn't even know I wanted. I got something that I didn't even know I wanted that, and I got it. It was so cool. And bringing the desire, so what we do is we take the desire on the surface, just like we look at our physiology on the surface, all formed, it has a shape and a whatever. And we look at it at finer levels, it becomes more abstract, more expanded. And then we come down to this lovely feeling of fulfillment. And as the fulfillment aligns with cosmic intention, it aligns with evolution. It aligns with a principle of expansion of consciousness and expansion of all that is good for everyone, everywhere. So sometimes it has to like adjust a little bit. It has to modify just a bit in order to accommodate the needs of the whole, the needs of the rest of creation. And that's okay, because at that level, that little tiny accommodation is only going to enhance the effect, the manifested effect in the end. So I better keep holding it. So here's this sweet little intention. And the intention itself has a kind of a life. It has a beginning where we gave birth to it, we created it, and where we then put it in the hands of that pristine light, which is the intention behind the manifestation of the whole universe, and that first expression of that pristine, pure energy that gave rise to the whole universe, that first expression are these little blueprints, these templates. And so at that level, it's very, very tender and very delicate. But for those of you who are comfortable feeling how your consciousness feels at a very, very tender, very like barely manifest level, barely there, that fulfillment, it's so delicate that we're not even holding on to it really. It just is. That at that level, one can include the tiniest little, and this comes from the, so that tenderness comes from the celestial level of physiology. This is why it's in the gap. The intention, that little intention, I would like this to be for my health, or I would like this to be for wealth, or whatever is the intention, that comes from the causal level of the physiology. That's why it's in the gap. Just like awareness, it's in the gap between manifest and unmanifest. So the templates are right there. They get a little bit from this part of the physiology, they get a little bit from that part. So what this means is integration. This is where we started this session, right? We're creating integration between the celestial, causal, spirit level. See, a lot of the seeds of desire come from the spirit level of the physiology, because here we see the entire story of the soul's journey. So each of us are individual desires. A lot of the seeds of those desires are here in the spirit body. But that integration means that we're working the continuum of self at this fine level of creation is working in an extremely sophisticated manner, very harmoniously. You're working with yourself. This is where we are doing the opposite of self-sabotage. What stops us from having our desires fulfilled, right? Somewhere along this continuum, there's a block of stress that like sabotages it, right? So what we're doing is we've got this integration going at the subtle levels of the physiology so that it creates an interference pattern to self-sabotage. So instead of, I could say, oh, we're dissolving self-sabotage out of the spirits, causal and celestial levels of the physiology, but really we're looking at the glass half full. So we're saying that we have created an integration there that disallows the presence of self-sabotage. It allows the desire to stabilize in the being before it even manifests, to stabilize and for success to be established, for the completion to already exist before it even starts to interface with all the laws of the rest of the universe, and so everything comes together at the right place and the right time for your desire to be fulfilled. Before any self-sabotage can stop it from happening. And what we've done is we started with a condition or situation where manifestation works sometimes but not others, and dissolve that into the source of creation, and then brought the manifesting skills back out in a form which is incomparable, in a form which cannot be destroyed, in a form which is invincible, an invincible form, a form guaranteed for success. At this fine level, this tenderest quality of your being is friends with the template. They're like playmates. They play together. They work together. They modify each other. Your finest being is having an effect on the template, and the template is having an effect on your finest being. It's helping to upgrade your ability to understand your desire in such a fine and profound degree that it is guaranteed success. This, again, is like an incredible play. This is like the play of the soul. And what we find is these two pieces. This is a level of creation, this celestial causal level, where everything is curling into itself. There's a kind of pouring. It's like they're pouring into each other. And this is happening all over the place at the celestial level of the body. All the 3-in-1 structure, for those of you who are all familiar with 3-in-1, Sanghita, Rishi Devata Chandas, if you want to go Vedic style on it there. But this folding that takes place, this folding is taking place. And there's a 3-in-1 structure to it. There's your individual desire. There's a template, which is the blueprint of the desire. And then there is a dynamic interaction between them. It's 3 in 1, and they're folding like that. And they're folding. With every fold, greater refinement and power is established. And it feels like fulfillment. The feeling is fulfillment. And the more tender it becomes, the more powerful it becomes. The more powerful it becomes, the more invincible the desire is, the more established it is in the whole realm of creation, so that every corner of the universe is standing in readiness to support that desire. Beautiful. Okay, everybody. We have come to our hour. You guys were really quiet tonight. You were also awesome. You were very busy on the subtle level of creation, but it was sweet. Sometimes I get lots of questions, they come up in a sidebar here, but I do thank the 2 people who wrote in questions in the email. And of course, everybody's always welcome to do that. And I especially thank everyone who's here tonight for participating in this process, because the work that we did today wasn't just for ourselves. We're like a beacon. We create ourselves into a kind of wholeness in these webinars. And we were a beacon sending all this information like a download out to the rest of humanity. Because as I mentioned, the rest of the universe standing in readiness to fulfill our desire, the rest of humanity is standing in readiness, wanting this information like crazy. So as we're offering it through our own experience of actually living it, we live through the experience of this in the webinar, we are standing as a kind of a shining mirror to the rest of humanity to understand these are the mechanics by which we are going to get through this transition. We are going to get through this transition with grace. We can do this. We wouldn't be given the challenges that we've been given at this time if it wasn't within the potential of every person on earth to be able to make the move, which we are being led by breadcrumbs to make, to awaken to our cosmic potential, and then harness and use that cosmic potential to create a world with resources, opportunities, and dignity for all, to create a world, a function in the family of all of humanity that provides everything that everyone needs in a way which also blesses and balances the ecosystem of Mother Earth, that provides a platform for unprecedented expansion of knowledge, technologies, safe, healthy technologies, technologies of consciousness, and evolution, spiritual evolution for everyone on Earth. Thank you, everyone. You are so blessed. You are so beautiful. You are so great for what you have done. Thank you. Some of you, I will see you tomorrow morning. Some of you, you will see me when we send you the recording of tomorrow morning. And I just want to thank everyone. We have done our time. So I'm going to end the meeting for all, but just infinitely grateful. Bye.